Welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Let's begin.
Let's go.
So in the summer of 2026, the biggest threat to public safety in Paris wasn't actually dehydration.
No, it really wasn't.
And it wasn't heat stroke either. It was drowning.
Right, which, completely upends how we typically think about extreme weather.
Exactly. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled to have you in the room with us today. Our mission here is to really unpack this escalating global crisis of extreme heat. We're going to look at how it's, completely rewriting the rules of our daily life, fracturing our infrastructure, and even polarizing global politics.
Yeah, and to do this, we are synthesizing some incredible data for you today. We're looking at the macro-level reality of the unprecedented 2026 European heat waves, and we're pairing that with these really fascinating ground-level insights from a Red Cross report.
Right, the one focusing on South Asia.
Exactly, specifically Nepal and Bangladesh. Because we really want to understand how human beings actually survive when the temperature pushes well past the limits of human endurance.
So look, if you want a shortcut to being completely well-informed on a phenomenon that is fundamentally reshaping the physical world you live in right now, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to explore how just a few degrees of heat can cause massive train derailments in Sweden.
Yeah, that part is wild.
Totally. And why air conditioning has suddenly become this fierce political wedge issue. Plus, how a simple packet of salt is somehow outperforming billion-dollar infrastructure.
It's a lot to cover.
It is. So let's just jump right into the sheer physical scale of what happened in Europe in the summer of 2026. Because look, this wasn't just, uncomfortable weather where you sweat through your shirt on the way to the office.
No,
This was a fundamental breakdown of the physical world.
I mean, the timeline alone is really striking. This heat dome locked into place in late May of 2026, and it just surged relentlessly through June. I mean, it was shattering historical records week after week across the entire continent.
Yeah, the peak numbers are genuinely hard to wrap your head around. The temperature hit 45.1 degrees Celsius.
Which is astronomical for that region.
Right. That's 113.2 degrees Fahrenheit, and that was in Andújar, Spain.
Right.
When you hit those numbers, the infrastructure we rely on every single day, it just gives up.
It literally breaks.
Yeah, you look at the data from that summer, and it reads like a localized apocalypse. I mean, the concrete on German autobahns actually expanded so violently that it burst open.
Oh, wow.
And in Leipzig, the asphalt underneath the tram lines literally melted into a liquid state. And then there's the Sweden thing. A 600-meter freight train derailed because the steel tracks themselves just warped under the sun.
It's incredible.
The best analogy I could think of for Europe's infrastructure, which was largely built for temperate, mild climates, is that it's like putting a heavy winter coat inside an oven.
Right.
But, I mean, if the literal foundation of our cities, like the concrete and the steel, is buckling, what does that mean for our baseline assumptions about modern engineering?
Well, it means we're witnessing the death of a foundational concept in civil engineering. It's called stationarity.
Stationarity. Okay. Unpack that for us a bit.
So stationarity is the baseline assumption that the envelope of natural weather variability is fixed. Like for the last 100 years, if you were building a bridge or, say, a railway, you looked at the historical temperature maximums for that specific region.
Right. You look at the past to plan for the future.
Exactly. And then you engineered your expansion joints, those little metal gaps on bridges, to handle that specific range of thermal expansion.
Got it.
But a 45-degree day in Europe obliterates that historical envelope. The material just expands beyond the engineered tolerance. It has nowhere to go but up and out.
So the concrete explodes.
Concrete explodes, steel tracks buckle. We are essentially running a real-time global stress test on a century of urban design. And, well, the design is failing.
I have to push you on one detail here, though, because it honestly confused me when I was reviewing the data.
Sure. What is it?
I totally get the sun beating down on a steel train track and warping it. That makes intuitive physical sense.
Right.
But in France, 68,000 households lost power. And in Turin, Italy, there were repeated rolling blackouts, specifically due to thermal stress on underground cables.
Yes.
How is an underground cable, which is completely shielded from the sun, overheating?
It's a brilliant question, really. And it comes down to how heat transforms the environment at a microscopic level. Normally, the cool Earth acts as a heat sink.
Okay.
When electricity surges through underground cables, it generates internal resistance heat. The soil absorbs that heat and safely dissipates it. But during a prolonged heat dome, two things happen.
What's the first?
First, everyone turns on their fans and air conditioners at the exact same time. That creates an unprecedented electrical load, massively increasing the heat generated inside the cable itself.
So the system is totally maxed out.
Exactly. But second, the ground itself bakes. The moisture in the soil evaporates completely.
Oh, I see.
And dry dirt is a terrible conductor of heat. It actually acts like a ceramic insulator. Yeah, so the ground stops being a cooling blanket and becomes a thermal oven. The cables can't shed their heat, the protective insulation melts, they short out, and boom, the grid goes dark.
Which means the infrastructure is failing us right at the exact moment we need it most for our own biological survival.
Exactly.
And the data from the World Weather Attribution scientists proves this isn't just some freak, once-in-a-lifetime occurrence anymore, right?
No, not at all. They found that this level of severe June heat would have been, well, virtually impossible back in 1976 without human-caused climate change.
So it shifts the context entirely. We can no longer view these events as rare anomalies. They're systemic, recurring failures.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the human cost.
Yeah.
And, this is where the conversation gets incredibly heavy, but it is so vital for you listening to really understand.
Yeah, it is.
There were over 2,113 excess deaths recorded across Europe during this period, with more than 1,000 in both France and Spain alone.
Staggering numbers.
But this goes back to our starting point about Paris. When we think of heatwave casualties, we usually just picture dehydration. We picture someone collapsing in the direct sun.
Right, heat stroke.
Yeah, but it's not just the ambient temperature that's deadly. It's our desperate reactions to it, like jumping into dangerous waters.
Right, because extreme environmental pressure forces human beings into dangerous, totally uncharacteristic behaviors.
In France, there were 55 drownings during the heatwave. And the wildest part of the data is that 2/3 of those occurred because people were swimming in unauthorized or completely unsupervised areas.
Oh, wow.
People were just so desperate to cool down, they were throwing themselves into dangerous currents. The city of Paris even opened the historic Canal Saint-Martin to public swimming, just to give people an outlet.
Which is wild.
It completely alters how people interact with their physical environment. But why? Why do normally rational people suddenly just ignore massive safety risks like that?
Well, because extreme heat physically alters your brain chemistry. It severely impairs cognitive function.
Wait, really? Like at a biological level?
Yes, absolutely. When your core temperature rises dangerously high, your hypothalamus, which is the part of the brain that regulates temperature, it goes into overdrive.
Okay.
So to cool you down, your body initiates massive vasodilation. It's basically pushing blood away from your internal organs and your brain out to your skin so you can sweat.
So your brain is literally getting less blood flow.
Yes, and specifically the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for logic, planning, and risk assessment, it starts to power down.
Wow.
You aren't thinking about hidden undertows or the lack of lifeguards. Your primal brain takes over with a single overwhelming biological imperative.
Which is just drop your core temperature right now.
Right now, by any means necessary, adapting to heat isn't just about telling people to find shade or drink water. It requires urgent, proactive public health communication and emergency management because normal human risk assessment algorithms just completely short-circuit.
And you can really see that short-circuiting in the absolute overwhelming of the emergency services.
Oh, yeah.
The French Interior Minister noted that ambulances responded to over 122,000 calls during the height of the heat wave.
That's just an unfathomable volume.
It is. In a single 24-hour period, the emergency medical services in Paris, the SAMU, reported 109 deaths. Normally, on a standard summer day, they see about 7.
Going from 7 to 109, it's a total system overload.
Yeah.
The hospitals, the ambulances, the power grids, the roads, they all fail simultaneously because they are these interlinked nodes in a society that was designed for a climate that simply no longer exists.
So Europe spent a century and billions of euros trying to engineer its way out of nature, and it's failing. That forces us to logically shift gears and look at places that never had those massive budgets.
Right, the front lines.
How are people in South Asia surviving temperatures that are literally melting German autobahns? These are communities closer to the equator that face an even more pervasive chronic threat from heat.
The contrast is incredibly revealing, actually. In South Asia, the heat isn't an anomaly that ruins a summer weekend. It is a grinding daily reality.
Right. I was reading through the Red Cross surveys of over 2,000 people in Nepal, in Bangladesh, and one specific anecdote really punched me in the gut.
Which one?
Well, we might complain when our office AC is on the fritz, right? Like, it's annoying.
Sure.
But imagine your home actually acting like an amplifier for the heat, just trapping you in a tin box. There's a woman in Dhaka living in a tiny tin house with 5 family members. Tin absorbs and radiates heat like an oven.
Oh, this sounds unbearable.
They share a single small fan.
Yeah.
She described how they just can't sleep night after night. The children are constantly crying from the physical discomfort.
And that leads to a devastating cascading effect.
Exactly. The disrupted sleep means you can't work effectively the next day, assuming it isn't too hot to work outdoors in the first place.
Right.
And lost income means you can't buy food, so you have to take out high-interest loans from predatory lenders just to survive the week.
It's a vicious cycle.
It really is.
Yeah.
But I have to ask you, how do these simple community-level interventions actually stack up against the massive structural failures we saw in Europe?
Well, what is so compelling about the South Asian data is the value of what the Red Cross calls anticipatory action or early action protocols.
Okay, I'm going to push back on this a bit because I'm looking at this report and, frankly, it sounds like a massive mismatch.
How so?
We just spent 10 minutes talking about how billions of dollars of massive European infrastructure are melting. You're telling me that a local community group in Bangladesh is somehow a more effective adaptation strategy? I mean, how is that mathematically possible?
I know it sounds totally counterintuitive, but the data proves it works because they are solving a fundamentally different problem.
Okay, explain that.
Europe tries to defeat extreme heat purely as an engineering problem, massive infrastructure. South Asia treats it as a behavioral and community problem. Agility and direct communication actually outmaneuver rigid infrastructure in a lot of cases. Delivering support directly into people's daily routines is a highly effective, immediate way to save lives.
So what does that look like on the ground?
The surveys showed that respondents who were exposed to Red Cross heat interventions were over twice as likely to change their behavior to protect themselves. They used things like public miking.
Public miking?
Yeah, literally driving through neighborhoods making loudspeaker announcements about the specific heat hazards for that day, or holding localized community meetings.
Oh, right. The report mentions an outdoor worker in Rajshahi.
Yes, that's a perfect example.
After attending one of these community meetings, he completely changed his routine. He learned to carry and drink saline water to stay hydrated and replace electrolytes while working outdoors. It's such a small adjustment, but it kept him out of the hospital.
Exactly. And when you scale that one small behavioral adjustment across a highly vulnerable population of millions, it dramatically reduces mortality rates. It proves that adaptation doesn't always require billion-dollar infrastructure overhauls that take a decade to build. Sometimes the most powerful tool for survival is just a well-timed loudspeaker and a packet of salt.
Which is a perfect pivot to the ultimate symbol of modern adaptation and arguably the most controversial appliance on the planet right now: air conditioning.
Oh, absolutely.
The contrast between Europe's struggling infrastructure and South Asia's behavioral adaptations brings up this fascinating question. Because cooling down has surprisingly become a massive cultural and political battlefield.
It really has. As global temperatures rise, air conditioning transitions from being viewed as a luxury to a basic survival mechanism. But it carries immense ideological baggage.
And look, I want to be incredibly clear right up front for you listening. We are not taking sides here.
No.
We are just impartially reporting on the political content provided in these sources to convey the landscape. We aren't endorsing either viewpoint.
Exactly. We're just looking at the facts on the ground.
So you look at the political landscape in Europe right now, and the politicization of air conditioning is wild. On the right wing, you have politicians like Marine Le Pen in France aggressively championing massive air conditioning plans.
Right.
They are framing resistance to it as this misguided, out-of-touch left-wing project that forces people to suffer unnecessarily.
But then you flip to the left-wing governments, and the approach is completely inverted.
Right. Look at the city of Ghent in Belgium.
Yeah.
During the heat waves, they initially put out official advice telling residents to explicitly avoid using air conditioners.
Which aligns with the European Union's broader goal of reaching climate neutrality by 2050.
Yeah, you even had an EU commissioner publicly blaming fossil fuel interests for intentionally obstructing green policies by pushing these energy-hungry cooling systems.
Because that is the core impossible paradox of air conditioning.
Right.
It is a highly effective, localized solution to a life-threatening immediate problem, but it directly contributes to the long-term exacerbation of that exact same problem.
Because of the energy it uses.
Exactly. AC units leak refrigerants and require massive amounts of energy, mostly generated by fossil fuels. During the peak of the June heat wave, the Dutch energy company Essent reported that residential electricity consumption shot up by 50%.
50%.
Yeah, our grids literally cannot handle the demand of everyone trying to survive the heat at the exact same time.
It feels like society is stuck in a tug-of-war on a tightrope. We're trying to balance immediate physical survival with long-term planetary survival.
That's a great way to put it.
And layer on top of that the cultural friction. I mean, there's this massive divide between how the U.S. and Europe view cooling. Americans are totally baffled by Europe's lack of AC.
Oh, for sure.
Americans view the European resistance to AC as this strange propensity to just embrace suffering. Meanwhile, Europeans view American AC usage as incredibly greedy.
The cultural friction is palpable. And in France, it is deeply intertwined with a very specific, culturally ingrained belief. They have this phenomenon known as choc thermique.
Oh, thermal shock.
Yeah.
I found this absolutely fascinating in the sources.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
It's this widespread belief, which is heavily amplified by local French media, that moving from hot outdoor air into a cold air-conditioned room will cause you to faint, become severely nauseous, or instantly catch a viral illness.
Right.
But I have to wonder aloud here, is choc thermique a genuine, scientifically backed medical threat? Or is it just a psychological coping mechanism to culturally rationalize the fact that they don't have AC?
Well, that is the exact debate happening in public health circles right now. Physiologically, sudden extreme temperature changes can cause mild physical stress. Your blood vessels rapidly constrict.
Right, that makes sense.
But the cultural fear of choc thermique far outpaces the actual medical reality. It functions much more as a cultural narrative. If air conditioning makes you physically ill, then you shouldn't feel bad about not having it in your apartment.
That makes total sense.
But if we pull back and look at this broader context, it tells us that adaptation is deeply, deeply complex.
It's not just a math problem.
Exactly. It's not just an engineering problem. It requires navigating heavily polarized political landscapes and deeply ingrained cultural beliefs. As the sources show, every single cooling solution currently comes with an ideological or environmental cost.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive right now? Let's tie this entire thing together.
Yeah, let's look at the big picture.
With the 2026 European heat waves and the Red Cross data from South Asia expose is that extreme heat is exposing vulnerabilities globally. From buckling Swedish train tracks to stifling tin roofs in Dhaka.
It's everywhere.
And responding to this crisis is a messy entanglement of unpredictable human behavior, high-stakes politics, and failing infrastructure.
It really is.
And look, this is the blueprint for how your own local politics, your travel plans, and your daily routines will inevitably change.
We are collectively having to unlearn how to live in the climate we were born into and quickly learn how to survive in the one we are actively creating.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought for you to explore on your own. If extreme daytime heat continues to relentlessly reshape human behavior, infrastructure, and politics, how long until we see a fundamental reorganization of society's timetable?
That's a huge question.
Right. Like, will the standard 9-to-5 workday eventually become obsolete? Will global commerce, schooling, and outdoor life be forced to shift completely into the night just to escape the lethal sun? As you walk out your door today, you really have to ponder, how much longer until we become a nocturnal society?
It's a profound thought, and one the data suggests we may have to face much sooner than we think.
So, that ground beneath your feet might look solid today, but the rules are melting. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.